Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. In continuing our discussion about baptism, it's been said that baptism today really is more of a spiritual thing, that you don't actually have to be dunked in water, that really it's more of a heart type issue, and so physical, literal water isn't really required. Well, that's just not biblical. In fact, in the New Testament, when you see John the Baptist coming on the scene, well, his ministry was near the Jordan River, and the comment made about the Jordan River in John chapter 3, the reason that he was there, it says in John chapter 3, verse 23, John also was baptizing in Aenon near Salem because there was much water there, and people were coming and were being baptized. Okay, also in Acts chapter 8, when Philip is speaking to the Ethiopian eunuch, we've talked about this before, after he had convinced him about who Jesus was and what Jesus came to do. Notice Acts chapter 8 and verse 36, as they went along the road, they came to some water. And the eunuch said, "Look, water. What prevents me from being baptized?" If you drop down to verse 38, it says, "And he ordered the chariot to stop, and they both went down into the water, Philip as well as the eunuch, and he baptized him." You see that water is absolutely essential. Water is absolutely necessary for baptism. In fact, the very word for baptize in the Greek means to dip or to immerse. You might say that if we used our modern day vernacular, they would dip their dishes in the water. They would baptize their dishes when they were rinsing them off in water. Okay, that's really the meaning of the language, is dipping in water. But maybe that's still curious. Maybe some people are wondering, okay, well, why water? You know, what is it about water that's so special? Why is water even necessary? Why would God tell us to do that? Well, I'll just be honest with you. I have no idea. That's one of those things that, listen, God said it, and so I'm going to do it. And we should have that attitude that God deems that water is what's necessary for our salvation and for our baptism, and so let's do it. So I'm not going to pretend to know, okay, this is exactly why God chose water. However, what I can do is suggest a couple things to you, that when you look through the Bible at the way God uses water, it's very interesting, because God often uses water as a dividing line. Okay, so if you have Genesis chapter 6, for instance, God was sorry that he created the world, and so as a result he said, I'm going to send a flood on the earth to wipe out all the wickedness of the earth and to preserve righteousness through Noah. And so in Genesis, God uses water as a dividing line between wickedness and goodness. Okay, and then later in Exodus, when God is setting his people free from Egypt, he uses water as a dividing line between his people being in Egyptian bondage to Pharaoh and being free from bondage. You remember they went through the Red Sea. Okay, God uses the Red Sea, water, as that dividing line. You think about 2 Samuel chapter 5 with Naaman, who had leprosy. He was told to go dip in the Jordan River 7 times in order to remove his leprosy. So God there used water for healing, for cleansing, and making a person better. Even in the law of Moses, the priests, if they wanted to approach the temple, they had to make sure to clean themselves in this basin of water so that they would be clean, and God uses water there for cleansing. And that's all the Old Testament. Then you have the New Testament, where even in, say, John chapter 9, when Jesus heals the blind man, he tells him to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. And so he uses water there as a dividing line between blindness and sight. And so for me, even though I may not understand perfectly why God chose water to do these things, it's not far-fetched at all for me to see that in the New Testament, God would use water again as the dividing line between sinfulness and righteousness. And that makes perfect sense when we think about baptism as a burial, and we're burying our old sins in the waters of baptism and we're coming up in newness of life, water again is that dividing line between being a person that has sinned in his life or her life and being saved and being righteous. I hope that's helpful. Thank you for your interest in spiritual things, and Lord willing, I'll see you next time.